last week, and I think it just dropped, so this is a good one. We talked about W. We talked about Obama. We talked about Trump. We talked about Biden. We talked about Biden. And we talked about decorum. We talked about things that I think make us feel better. And as I've been thinking real good, because I felt like we both kind of recognized one thing about Obama. He was very articulate, very good orator. The way he presented, the way he spoke about what he was going to do and why it was in the best interest of whatever, and so on and so forth. If you really, and then I told you about the subtitles.
Yeah.
And that really took all that out of the game.
Because the inflection and whatever else, the delivery wasn't there, so that was just the message.
Right. And I went, holy snap. I mean, because it was a terrible, nobody would disagree with I don't think, very few people would disagree, I think, out there, although who knows, with the scores of folks that are listening, that Iran deal that he struck was bad. It was, I mean, we got a whole war going on in large part because of Iran funding. Inexplicably.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of deaths and a lot of ugly going on in a couple of places in the world, and we just so happen to have a footprint. Both places wars are going on. We've got, I read on the news today that Russia's shaking hands with North Korea. Boy, is this reminiscent of years past. So I started thinking, okay, and that's always dangerous for me. So I wanted to roll this by because we had kind of a spirited debate on this. You liked some things about W. I liked that he could throw a strike in the World Series. I liked his decorum as well during the 9/11 fiasco. I very much did enjoy that presidential flair. We talked about Tricky Dick, Bill, and the dress. And we didn't talk about the dress. But we talked about how, in so many words, how a fella can bald-faced lie as a president of the United States. Just lie. He committed perjury. I believe that he was impeached, and nothing really, impeachment lost its power completely with that. And he lied to Congress, and if you and I were to do that in our professions, we are
disbarred and
all sorts of fun stuff.
Whatever.
And so there's some real consequences. There's real consequences of people lying to their boss and they get fired. I mean, it just is what it is. And so it's like the president of the United States, who works for 300 plus million folks, that's the whole thing, lied, and no consequence. Now, I would say that we already got a question. Okay, let's go.
Was that perjurous?
Was it perjurous? That's a new word.
Is that a word? Okay.
I don't know. I like it, though. I mean, we could use
Was
it.
it perjury? Was he on, or was he just?
He lied.
Was that a perjury?
Anytime you're in front of Congress, I think it's considered perjury if you're
Yeah.
if you're caught in some kind of untruth. So yeah.
So he did not have sexual relations with that woman. Oh, snap.
So he should have been criminally charged for perjury.
Or for a myriad of other things. I mean, there's the sock drawer. And so, I mean, where do we draw some lines? I mean, the sock drawer case. And so, and a lot of our listeners will know a little bit about the sock drawer case. It's the same exact case that Trump's facing right now somewhere, amongst many of them, about having documents, classified documents. Biden has classified documents. All of them really do. And it really became kind of a flashlight on it. What do we do with this? With Clinton's sock drawer, he had a bunch of tapes that were classified, and they were in his sock drawer, and it was after his presidency. And the DOJ made a decision not to pursue the case because the president could, and it went to the Supreme Court. The president could, by magic or unicorn power, I think, could declassify whatever they had in their possession with a wand of magic. They didn't say it quite that way,
Right.
but it was basically boiling down the cabbage is what it said. And so here we are. And the difference between, and I didn't intend to get into this, but I wanted to, but this does kind of segue. The difference between Trump and Biden are those records were accumulated during his senatorial time, his vice presidential time, not his presidential time. And that's interesting because you don't have
The same authority.
Right, that authority as any of those offices. That you can't declassify squat as a vice president. I'm not even sure what the hell a vice president does. It's kind of like a first lady to me. What do they do?
I don't know how much. Yeah. We're not in that inner circle to know how much advice is being. I mean, maybe right now your vice president is doing a lot because I question the competency of mentally of the age and mental capacity right now.
What's our vice president's excuse? I question her
No,
competency
I'm just
too.
saying that she might have a lot of say in
She
what's
may.
going on right now.
She may, I don't know. When she
as
ever
far as
says anything, it's
What
like,
what
oh,
she
no.
actually can do, I don't know. But what her influence is, may be quite strong right now. Who knows?
Well, I mean, Dick Cheney shot somebody.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, in a hunting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's hunting. He's just playing Elmer Fudd and ended up getting somebody in the face. So they didn't die.
No.
They didn't. It was, it was through and through.
Lucky man.
It was a shotgun. They were bird hunting. So, okay. I want to flip-flop because I want to set the stage.
That's a sensitive word for Paige.
Flip-flop?
After last week's episode, but I think
It was out there for 3 weeks.
I believe you.
Okay, her observing skills, they're on point with very specific things. But outside of those very specific things, they're not there.
And all right.
What Mr. Hobo fails to observe himself is all the 10 other things I picked up around that flip-flop that he never even
So
Well, those are things you were trying to hide from me.
on the floor. The table.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Tangent.
Thanks for bringing that up, Westover. Westover Law Firm is also specializing in marital strife.
No, yeah, just sticking my toe in the water there.
Oh, this is awesome. So what we got? So here's what I want to say. Okay, so The Apprentice. Somebody look this up. You got your phone, I believe, nearby page. Can you look up what year The Apprentice began? 'Cause I don't know this off the top of my head, and I never saw one thing about it. I just know you're fired thing.
Yeah, and there was like some lady that made news for herself being on it. I can't remember. Osmara or something. Something. I don't know. I didn't see an episode either, other than
But apparently we're one of the only
early
two people.
2000s, my guess.
I think so would be my guess. I'm going to go with 02, 1, 3. Yeah, she's getting there. This is kind of slow for her. She's usually pretty. 4. So it was a number 1 rated show, was my understanding. 2004, number 1 rated show. So that's pretty big time. And a name for himself is "You're fired. You're fired. You're fired." Well-structured show. Apparently, a lot of people watched it, and those people that watched it are probably people that are not liking his rhetoric or his presidential, way, or lack of presidential demeanor. Kind of like Obama had in spades. We saw a very different,
Opposite.
a very different kind of a bull in a china closet. Says it like it is, and we kind of and there was a vibe with our pod last week that there was a divisive nature with the way he went about things. My question is twofold, so I want to do a thought experiment. But to get to that, my question is, has it gotten any better since Biden got into office?
The message.
Yeah,
The
has
delivery?
the division
Oh, no.
of our nation gotten any better?
No, and I think that's, we talked about Trump maybe having kind of fostering that climate and culture of divisiveness, I think that's just been perpetuated in this administration as well. I don't feel like there's that warm and fuzzy that maybe I talked about. So look, I tell this to my kids all the time. I believe that there is a delivery method that comes across more impactful as a father. Let's say this: if I'm yelling at my kids and telling them they're idiots and telling them that they're never going to amount to anything, that message is not going to be well received, right? No matter what, whether that's true or not, whether I'm a bull in a china shop and I'm telling you like it is, and that may be a truth, that's not going to be received real well. And so I've learned as a dad, as a coach, whatever, as a husband, the delivery matters. And even if the message is the same, the delivery matters. And so I've learned, and so that's why Obama was, at least for me, the message was more easily ingested, whether like you said, put it on subtitles and that's what politicians sometimes can do, but sometimes it came across as less divisive because of the way it was delivered. And so no, to answer your question, I mean, that was a long way to answer your question, but no, it's not. Biden's is very much the same way.
We're just as polarized.
We haven't, in fact, our first immigration reform that was proposed during election season, the last time it was in, came yesterday.
Yeah.
2 weeks or whatever, 6 months before an election
season. We got 2,500 folks, roughly, give or take, a day.
But yeah, so I haven't been impressed with, I am always appreciative of a politician that proposes things, actually puts plans out, and then, and to Trump's credit, if he would have just kept the hate out of it, he did. He executed better maybe than most presidents. Hey, I've got a plan. If you elect me, this is what I'm going to do. And to his credit, he did that. So I just wish that the message would have been more easily received, so that it didn't cause a chasm, right? Yeah, and exactly, and maybe that's the opposite. Is you don't hear the message, you don't see the delivery, and you just hear or you just read the message. I think that I absolutely think that would make more people happy, and the divisiveness would be a little bit.
Okay, both of you, we're going to pause now. Flip-flop Obama and Trump, their time. So 08, 07, 08.
Okay.
To, what was it, 16?
16 to 20.
Flip-flop it.
Put Obama in that 16 to 20.
Flip-flop it. We weren't as divided in 08. We were amazingly divided, crazy partisan at the end of Obama, because socialism began to creep in heavy, and you had to provide insurance for all of your people, no matter what, whether you wanted to or not. You had to do this, you had to do that. They had this Obama failure care. Everything was going, government was expanding to a rate that alarmed the Republican base or party, and they really felt voiceless because there was this really welcomed first black president, incredibly articulate, yada, yada, yada. And so he was really almost kind of a little bit untouchable as far as criticism. Now, he's gotten plenty of it since he's left the presidency, but during his presidency, he did not get much of that. Trump would have been, as he was, in my opinion, now I'm going to get your opinion after mine, Trump would have been received as he was on television, being watched by far more millions of people than a United States president is watched during his apprentice years. He would have been received that way during that time of life, 2008 to 2016. Now, when were you born, Caden?
2005.
Okay, so Caden was born in 2005. So by the time he's 10 years old, it's 2015. He learned how to text before he didn't even learn how to write cursive.
He did, but he doesn't know. They actually still teach it.
See, I don't remember.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
I understand.
They do. They make him do it for third and fourth grade, and then after that,
I'm not ripping on my man Caden.
Yeah.
They know how to text now.
Sure.
There's a social media. They have a Facebook and an Insta thingy, and they know how to manipulate YouTube to find out how to build whatever Lego or whatever thing that they're doing. If we're lucky, they're building Legos. But my point is the world changed in that period of Caden being born and Caden turning 10. And so did the media. So did, if there was the media we have now, we would have been more informed as to how far will this Obamacare thing go? How far will this this is socialism. Yeah. This is looking real socialist real fast. What's happening here? How far? We had one guy, well, we had more than one guy, but we had a lot of people jumping up and down about a birth certificate. We still don't know anything about his birth certificate, but who cares? I'm not trying to resurrect that.
Right.
I'm just saying that we didn't hear a whole lot of naysayers. And if it wasn't Arpaio, who was probably equally as popular as the president before Obama, sea to shining sea, we probably never would have heard about the birth certificate thing. But Arpaio was really chasing that down for whatever reason, and he got a stick in his craw on that one. And I'm not here to talk one way or the other on that, but I'm just saying flip-flop those presidencies. How does it look?
Yeah, and you do a good job of, and maybe that's your time at the gym when you put your headphones in and just read subtitles, right? Because you do a good job of just keeping it on the, you're just looking at it on a political side and taking all personalities out of it. And I appreciate that. And somebody that can do that has got a special talent, I think. And so good for you. Because we talked about headlines and
Sure.
and not getting caught up in that. And so you're reading, into the Iran deals, and you're actually getting an opinion on social, or feeling that Obamacare is socialism, and you're absolutely right. And so you're whittling it down to the political divide that was happening, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's been happening. I don't even think it's. Again, I think this is a gradual, right. Just all of a sudden a shot up. If we were looking at a chart that shoots up this way with one president, I think it's been curving that direction for a while. And that probably is what you said, the nature of information becoming more available and people becoming more active on their opinions before people just grind and do their job, do their duty. Right. And we talked about that even in previous podcasts, that generationally we've changed we question a lot more, right? And our kids question even more. Yeah. So that requires, or that perpetuates more opinions and more conjecture and whatever else, and maybe less facts. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're curving upwards, and then and Obama might have spiked it even more politically on the divide as far as what is conservative, what is socialism, what is, liberalism, whatever. I think the only thing that I revert back to on our conversation is that I still am a fan of the message. I still am a fan of the delivery. And so what I'm still waiting and wishing that I if I could boil down just to Trump politics, I'm on board fully, right? And I'm invested, but I'm invested emotionally. Right now I'm only invested politically in what Trump says. Right. Emotionally, it's hard for me to grasp and say, this is my leader. And I've always wanted a leader. I look back religiously, historically. I love these leaders. We talked about Lincoln. I love guys that could stand up morally and you go, I want to follow that guy.
But that's because we're reading him. We're not watching him.
There's probably truth to that. And history, is hindsight. And so we look at it in a future context. I've read a lot about Lincoln, and I still like morally where he stood.
I loved Lincoln.
And so Lincoln. Those leaders, or in my religious upbringing, they were heroes that I looked up to in the Bible and whatever else.
On the flip side of Lincoln, FDR, which now we're getting radio, and we're getting a little bit of television, but it's more radio at that point. So it was audio, and he had a very good delivery as well. But I've read mostly FDR. I read much like you do. I mean, I've got a whole entire, you can ask Paige about this, it's not 3 weeks old, whole entire bookshelf dedicated to Lincoln. Love Lincoln. FDR has a lot of cameos in there too. And I feel like, holy crap, talk about the start of our divide. I feel like it began probably before him. I'm not wise enough to say when it began, and when it probably began from the Jump Street, because when somebody's in power, somebody's trying to corrupt
influences go their political way.
Right. That's been going on since this ball's been rolling around. But this nearly 300-year-old experiment that we're doing is special, and is special in the history of this world.
Sure.
And the men that have been our leaders have been special, and they have been not special all at the same time. Some have been, Lincoln is definitely reverenced by most folks, but he was not liked in those days.
Sure.
That is not. You learn that Nixon, and we all, in hindsight, look back at Nixon and think one thing.
Yeah.
Nixon was the most popular president we've ever had in the history of the United States. He was the most popular president we ever had. And that guy resigned. How Gerald Ford even became president is kind of a little bit tricky, a little bit interesting, how that quicksand happened. Anyway, that's probably not in the Constitution, but let's carry on. My point is that now you can be an activist and not do a thing, but type a few things on your phone, I guess that's thumbs, or on your keyboard, and you don't have to do much. And that emboldens those that do, and to where we're in this vicious, divisive cycle right now. And I'm wondering how to break loose from that.
No, and to me, whether it'll ever happen or not, because of where we've been going and my faith in where we might be going, I don't know if I have faith in this. I would love to believe it. I would love to have Caden's perspective that the biases and the system is set up to be able to succeed all long term. And it is set up for that, but I would really love to see another leader. Not just a president. I'd love to see a leader of identity, morality, ideas that can also deliver that message with a uniting feeling. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that message will ever be received again, because you have to put a political bias into what you're doing when you're a president of the United States, because you are being voted by a party and you're responsible. And that's a great responsibility to your constituency and what they feel. But I also respect the person that sits up there and maybe sometimes every once in a while goes apart, against party lines and says, this is what I believe in. I have great respect for that, whether I believe in that policy or not.
Kind of a Kristen Sinema type scenario.
And Sinema did
that.
She
did that a few times.
She put herself on the line, and whether you like her or not, I did respect that she was kind of leaned both. She was on the Democrat side, but she voted against the Democrats several times.
And I like to see that.
And she would say, and what I did respect is she would say, because this, even though I'm a Democrat, this does not help Arizona. Right. And so I did feel like there was a little bit of at least that thought that, okay, I represent the people of Arizona, no longer just the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have a president say I represent. I've heard presidents say that. Even Obama, I think, probably was quoted as saying, I represent all Americans, not the Democratic Party. Now, whether he did that or not is neither here nor there. I do like I said, I admire leadership. And so I like looking at somebody and at least feeling like there's leadership characteristics. And that I don't mean politically. I just mean
I think
as a personality.
To answer my own question, I think if you flip-flop Obama and Trump, I think Trump today, as we stand, as we're podding right here, right now, I think that Trump would be old, about the same age as he is now, of course. So, aging gentleman of like whisper respect, because the government hadn't gone that divided in specifically with those that are sitting in Senate and Congress, and those at the local levels and so on and so forth, the teachers' unions, the unions that became very emboldened during those times. Politics changed quietly and loudly during the Obama's 8 years. Quietly and loudly by all of these types of things that are happening, the health care being jacked with, the power of the FDA growing exponentially, the money that's able to be made in Washington, D.C., and that becoming one of the more wealthy or the wealthiest zip code in our country, wherein before Obama it was not. That's interesting to me. So
So let me ask. Let's take this. So your proposition is that he would be reverenced currently, like if he was
today,
and not in retrospect.
right?
So
No. So he wouldn't.
So
be a
that's why I
president.
asked.
So he'd be gone, and there would have been some folks that he ticked off because he is still Trump.
We're talking 10 years of retrospection. We'd look back and reverence him, but not while he was in office. You're saying
I'm
or
thinking
both.
while he was in office, he would have not been swimming upstream like a salmon.
Yeah.
I don't believe that he would have been investigated or impeached 47 times. I don't think that it wouldn't have been that way. It wouldn't have been on fire because the world wasn't that way just yet. It wasn't as divided. So that changes, and then add on top of it, you don't have a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Add on top of it, you don't have. So some of these things you can't order up. But I mean, I think today, looking back, he would be very well respected, probably more so than any president since probably Reagan.
So the only exception or the only issue I take with that is this. Again, dialing down, putting it on mute, the message, and just politically, I think you potentially have a legitimate argument that what it could have been accomplished in that time, what he did accomplish in his time, and putting that back 8 years without the political pressure and without the social media pressure and without all the hyper analysis on his personality, I think you're probably right, politically speaking. The reason Trump was popular for his Apprentice show that you never watched,
Right.
was because he was a dickhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that personality doesn't go away.
Right.
So whether he was doing that in 16 or 08, that's what he made himself popular. And for whatever reason, he had this pride of this is me and I tell people how it is and I call you fat pig and whatever else.
Yeah.
I don't know that message still, whether it's 08 or 16, gets him reverenced while he's president. Now, if he totally changed his personality,
Right.
maybe. So I think you're right in looking back at what he got accomplished potentially, but I still don't think that the divide is there because his personality is divisive a little bit, and Biden's as well. So I don't know.
I mean, he left The Apprentice to become president or to run his campaign. He was on until that moment. But I think that we reverence the presidency. And so the presidency is above, we want a man we're following, like William Wallace on
Braveheart.
Yes. And like who becomes presidential when he should, I think, is who acts in. Trump's a smart guy. He can.
What you can't argue with is he's on number one on these shows, this show, and you can't.
But so was
argue
Simon Cowell, right? And so that was his shtick, right?
Right.
That's why American Idol was popular because you wanted to see
when was Simon wrong?
There's truth to that.
The dude was never wrong.
But they weren't there because he was a great musical producer. Like even though he was,
Right.
people watched it because they wanted to hear Simon
agree with
say,
what
"You're
you're
an
saying."
idiot and
Right.
you can't sing and get away and you need to get a real job or whatever else."
Or when he got teary and like stood up and clapped.
But
for a
I don't
performance.
think that I would want Simon in that day. I wouldn't say, "Oh, that's the dad I want."
Right. Well,
That's
I'm
the
with
guy
you.
I want to follow. And so that's where I kind of differentiate between.
where I feel like
He's able to project a presidential. He's able to do that, I think.
it was the ones that watched The Apprentice that were voting him out.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure that
The ones that
his
watched,
popularity of Apprentice didn't necessarily translate to
Right.
his political popularity.
So,
but I just
the
saying
reality is
personality-wise.
I kind of find him funny, and some people find him offensive. I didn't find him funny at the beginning.
I find him
Paige,
hilarious and
Paige can attest to this.
I've never felt him
looked at him
funny.
that way.
I also don't get offended by him, but I also see where that, like I said, I always look at things personally as dad, husband, whatever, coach, whatever my jobs and roles are, attorney. And the reputation that I have, my 5 stars at my firm are not, they're 50% legal work and 50% my personality. Completely honest with you, and that I'm
And
able
your staff,
to
'cause they're fantastic, too.
and
Your
yeah,
team.
sorry, I don't. But yeah, my personality that we've been able to project in the culture of our
Well, there's
our
no question
firm.
I drop your name, but your team is
Yeah,
ridiculously
no,
awesome.
and then sorry, I didn't mean to.
that's the same our firm, Dana's culture that he's
Yeah.
Right.
here in all of that.
No, I understand what you're saying.
And so then, and as your culture looks to you as a leader, if you were out here calling me a fat pig from across the street, you lose respect for that message sometimes. And so I still look at the delivery, and I know that people appreciate. I'm not one of them. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't appreciate the hate. I know a lot of people are like, hey, it's okay because we've been having these politicians that speak rhetoric and speak, tongue in cheek all the time. And I get that. I totally do. I just still feel like if there is a genuine person to come along, I hope it comes along and can deliver a message and still politically fit in my ideals. Oh, sure. That's an ideal world. That's the world I want Caden to live in. And
I would like that too.
I would love that.
The problem is, and the reason why I compared is because I don't know, we could start looking these things up. Maybe we'll have our scores of people look it up on their own. Look at some of the interviews that Trump was doing on The View prior to being president. The View.
Yeah.
Like maybe his most...
Rosie O'Donnell and him were not real good friends, right?
Just one of his most... The best day of their life when he's on their show then, and the worst day ever when he gets elected president. If I don't know what happened here. Or CNN became not CNN anymore.
Yeah.
And Fox just kind of kept foxing reality here. I think they just kind of kept the same brand, kind of keeping on going. They've always been known to be on the right side of things, or right-leaning and conservative-leaning, and so they just kind of kept on going on. But to not buy into or not to be hysterical about something, that is what Trump came into, was a political landscape that was not anticipating Trump, not anticipating a Donald Trump coming in. He's not welcome in these circles that have been well established. Why is he not welcome? Because he's a wild card. Why is he not welcome on the world stage when he first goes onto the world stage? Because he'll call Young, whatever his name is, the North Korean, the dictator there. He'll just play with him, and then walk across the DMZ zone solo, like, and mend that fence.
No, and there, like
And
I
it's
said,
like,
there's a lot that got done, and I think there's a time and a place for everything, right? And messages don't always have to be. When I say the message has to be received well, know your audience, right?
Right.
I don't. If I coach differently than I father. There's times when I'm setting up a play and my kids are talking in the timeout. They're going to get an earful. That's not going to be the kindness time. That's going to be go run because I'm trying to deliver a message. This is not the time and the place. Right. Or, the way I talk to the opposing team might be different than my own team. Right. And so I think that I loved the emboldened, sometimes the international way he approached things. I'm no longer going to pander to these types of constituencies, or I'm not going to pander to, for him, it was Putin and him are kind of buddies, but I'm not going to pander to Iran or whatever he took, DMZ, whatever. I like that. I just don't like that every message seems to have that same feeling.
I think
there's a time and a place.
I would like to
when you see the division in the country that maybe come together.
I don't think that he would have. I think that he literally ran for office because of the division. I literally believe he thought this needs to be exposed, and he had enough faith in the success of America and how America can succeed. He had enough faith that would carry the day and take us back to the 1984, 1985. If you could change and I can change, we all can change. Rocky Balboa in Rocky IV. I really truly believe he wants us back in that, to where Caden has the ability or has the dream to have what you have, a home in a nice neighborhood with a cute wife and your mom. I know that's kind of weird to hear that, but she is a cute lady. But he wants to have what you have, a career. And right now, if I'm sitting at 18 wondering how in the Sam am I ever going to buy anything, ever. And so as a dad, I'm sitting here looking at my boys, and I've got a 21-year-old coming to work here in a week, and I've got an 18-year-old that's he's a wingnut, but you're way nicer than he is, and hopefully he listens to this. He's amongst the score. I love that kid. But he's taken off to North Dakota in August, and we have another 18-year-old that's in Arkansas right now. So the best thing I can do for them as they return back from their missions, I feel, is not put a down payment on a car, not sign them up for college, not any of those things, buy them luggage. And not to say get out, it's be prepared. Go where the opportunities are. Make yourself scarce. Make yourself unique. Go, because that's how you're going to have to pile in. You're going to have to make that kind of money to have our kind of life now, wherein you and I were able to do exactly what your dad did, do exactly what my dad did, line upon line, little bit by little bit, just kind of grow. And so that's Trump's vision of where we are and who we are. Why are we not drilling for oil? Why did all of a sudden we realize we're a world power of oil? In 2016, we realized this? How did we not know? We did know this. How did we not know? What are we doing?
And you know what? And I think in his mind and in his head, again, I'll distinguish the purpose from the message. So if the one thing that I wish is that purpose, because you're talking about what you want to see, what's the identity, what's the purpose, what's the central uniting factor that makes us Americans and where we want to be, where we were compared to 80s, and get back to that point. That's the message that I would like pushed.
Right.
This is where I want you to be. His Make America Great. Explain to me what made America great and say, this is what I'm going after. This is what's great about America.
Yeah.
The challenge, I think, is it's make America great again. And if you don't agree with me, I will stomp on your face on the way through. And so that doesn't mean that you're going to have to mow through people and ideas. And again, there's always going to be political biases to each, thing. But we talked about this. I think if you, as a country, can't identify with what it is you want to be and what the purpose is and what the central goal is, it's hard to get there. And so I love the message of Make America Great Again.
So I don't think that.
But what is that? How is that?
I don't think that the country was any different in 2008 than it was in the bull rush, in the bull market crash.
Back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, 90s. It was Clinton's.
Oh, with the .com stuff?
Yeah, the .com crash. And so our society was still the same. If Donald Trump ate garlic for lunch, he has 4 billion people. Okay, many microphones, many people with a microphone and a platform telling everybody about it. Okay, that we've never seen that before. He had investigations on his what is that? His when he's running, he quit The Apprentice to start campaigning. His campaign was being investigated. I mean, they were being spied on. All right, everything this dude did. So I come off so pro-Trump. I do like his policies, like you do. Don't care for, but man, what are you going to do to combat that? You've got Stacey Abrams that has been denying loudly. You've got people saying get in their faces. You've got half the country on fire that's run by blue, somebody blue in their state that just, unfortunately Portland ain't ever going to get that stigma off it. So my point is we're at the point where if we flip-flopped, 93, 08, in my opinion, no different. As far as us as citizenry, we're kind of wired quite the same. We still have that opportunity to become as we saw growing up.
That American dream, quote unquote,
was still attainable. And it's rapidly become not. And it's rapidly become not since Trump's been gone. I find that weird. Like, since it's been gone, this has happened in less than 4 years. How quick it unravels. So what we're looking at is you and your wife are walking in, keep this in mind, Caden, to your home after date night. You went out to grab a quick bite, and you see that couch, as you so eloquently described, with these juice boxes and with the milk that's been there for 2.5 weeks and the pizza pie boxes. And I believe it was applesauce.
Yeah, it's a stupid applesauce
It's
caps.
that bloody applesauce caps that are everywhere. And you came in from, it didn't look like that when you left, and it did when you came back. Caden, keep that in mind. Okay, you're the sheriff around there.
He's messy, though. That's the problem.
Okay.
No, not the applesauce caps, but everything. Yeah, he's still a messy kid.
All right, but keep this in mind. So that happened. So what do we do? So don't blame Trump for blowing a gasket a few times.
No.
I mean, getting a little bit pissed off. I probably would have been a little bit pissed off too. I would like to think that there is a soul out there that might handle that better. But all in all, I feel like if you take the whole picture into account, I feel like he was very diplomatic taking the whole picture into account. Very diplomatic. Now, of course, that's not saying much because he's popping off about somebody being a fat pig or
no, and you can do that
other.
because, so for example, you've had conversations about your dad, and I can hear the reverence and the respect that you have for your dad, but you're looking at it 25 years after being in his house, right?
Yeah.
And so when you were getting the belt,
right,
you didn't feel that same way
in that moment.
And in that moment, and maybe you would have even and I'm very accountable and realize that not everything I've done as a parent has worked or even was the right thing to do.
Yeah, we're still working on that together.
You go, remember? You go as you feel right, and sometimes you look back and go, okay, I didn't handle that right. And I think that that retrospect that I would hope, I hope. As many problems and as Caden's cussed my name out, that I hope in 10 years he looks back and goes, that time actually wasn't that bad. And man, I respect a lot of the things and the messages and the life lessons that were taught and whatever else. So I think that you saying that is looking at it as a whole of what that 4 years and what your life was like and the house prices and whatever else, oil, and you're absolutely right. And if you can keep, like I said, I love, because we've talked about this, that my biggest pet peeve is reading the headlines and not going into the actual minutia of it.
Meat of it.
You're doing that. You're saying, hey, I'm looking at the presidential part of it as a whole. You're saying that I feel like he was pretty diplomatic looking back at it. If it was a Tuesday in 2001 and you were hearing what he was saying on TV, you might not have felt that way that exact time that he was delivering that message. And so the only thing that mine's completely talking about personality-wise and that emotional connection that you have with the political side of you. I think no matter what, you are going to find 90% of the people, and Paige has talked about this, are emotional with their political side of things.
Right.
You and I can be pretty analytical and pretty take that emotion out. I'm just not a super highly emotional person in the first place, and so I like facts, right? And so you and I can look at this and go, loved it. Well, I think there's that emotional side of things that I would still like to be a little bit softened so that those emotions can, because emotions, they conjure passion, and passion is what gets things done.
I think
and so
Trump,
that's where I struggle.
I agree with you. I think that Trump would have surprised everybody had we rewound, but he wouldn't have run for president if we didn't have the Obama factor. He would not have run, but it was so divided, and most of us didn't even know, but he did know. And so he runs, but in 01, he's not dealing with or having to say a Rosie O'Donnell comment. He's not having to say you'd be in jail. He's not having to say things like that. You know what I mean? Like Trump likes to be one of the guys on the golf course and, rubbing elbows and at the UFC fights and he likes to he likes to get stuff done. He likes to build things. He likes to kind of feel like he did something good. You look how he talks about windows, beautiful windows, and this. You can kind of get a little insight on what this man likes to do. He likes to beautify. He likes to build and create, and that's exactly what transpired with our economy. That's it was even rebounding after the COVID fiasco before he took off, and he could have mailed it in at that point because he was, not voted in type deal. That said, I think that he's not dealing with as hysterical populace as we have now, and we can call it divided, but I really feel like in this conversation here, we can kind of drill down on, okay, you and your wife came back from that date and saw what you saw. You can't unsee it. And in that moment, Caden got to reap some hysterics in that moment. But down the road, those hysterics are rewritten in his own mind. He's not hysterically looking at it anymore. If that hurt his feelings or he's ticked off that he's got to put a bunch of his brother's stuff away or sister's stuff away or whatever else, or he got, mistreated or got the blame for one of the other ones doing whatever, blah, 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 blah. Okay. We've all been in those shoes, Caden, just so you know. We've all been there. But after drip drying for a few weeks, you're putting your towel away. You're putting your towel away. You're putting your towel away. That's for those score of people that watch our stuff regularly. So at some point, yes, there's a good answer, and hysterics is not it.
And my only thing that I would think would kind of bolster that thought from Caden that, hey, looking back, it wasn't that bad is I've talked to my parents about parenting, and one thing that I love about those conversations is they're pretty open to say, we were trying. They'll own that I didn't know what to do every time. And maybe my mom threw me out naked one time when I was 7 years old because I threatened to run away. She pulled me out of the shower and threw me out and said, well, if you want to run away, here's your bags, right? She probably looks back at that and says, okay, the neighbor's calling about the naked kids, 7 years old, pounding on the door. Probably wouldn't go over real well right now, and probably maybe wasn't her best move. But my dad was out of town. He traveled, and it was the fourth day of her being with an argumentative kid that didn't want to, whatever I was threatening not to do, dishes or whatever else. But I love the conversation, and it softens it for me to go, yeah, I'm a parent now, and she's owning the fact that maybe that wasn't my best moment as a parent. And so I think it softens the blow as the kid or as a constituency, as a populace, if there was some type of, hey, I'm going to take the approach of let's do a little bit less hate and let's get a lot more done. Let's unite. The policies can be the same. Yeah. I really don't care.
I just want to pull the hysterics out now that you're not hysterical about being
naked. And be hysterical sometime, but then own it and be accountable and say, okay, hey,
I like that.
There's better ways to do this.
That's a good message. I like that.
Because I think it's both ways. I think that it's easier to receive or to change your view on something when the other person says, hey, not everything I've done was perfect or is the way to do it.
If you've got trying.
But my message was, this is what I wanted.
Yeah, if your parents are trying.
And now looking back at it, you're going,
history will be kind.
When I got that belt, I probably deserved it, and maybe that wasn't the way that I would parent right now. But I understand, where he was at. I understand what the message or where the purpose was that he thought. It.
Yeah, every time. I deserve more than I got, and my dad did.
But you're saying that now because you've been a parent and you've got retrospect.
We used to beg my mom not to do it because we get the threat.
She couldn't execute it as well.
Well, right? Yeah, right. She would miss.
She'd miss. Yeah.
She would miss. She'd get the bottom of your legs. It's way worse, or your back, because she's irate, and kind of like your mom was feeling. Yes, I got squirted down with the hose because. I didn't get home in time and I was a little bit dirty and she'd already mopped the floor or whatever. And I was not stepping foot inside that house, but I hadn't showered and I was supposed to shower. So I got a hose. Yeah. And that's it. That's what we did. And it could have been wintertime. Yeah. Seemed to really kind of suck a little bit extra. And to have your mom squirting you down and you're a naked little, boy, it kind of sucks. So I get this, but they were trying. Yeah. And I look back on it not ticked off or not bent. I look back on it going, kind of funny, some of it. And then now as a parent hearing how my daughter thinks that she's going to raise her family perfectly. Not like us. Everything's... Right.
Well, and this goes to couples. Maybe it's even more the father-child relationships. Let's go and bring it to couples is even worse, right? So because I think there's even more emotion involved in that, and there's more maturity on both sides. So, as a husband or a wife, we may have moments where we despise our spouse, right? But the important thing is to go back. If you were to keep that message always that I was right in this situation, you don't end up having a very happy marriage if you continuously bring up all of the times you were right and none of the times you were wrong, right? Or owning the times when you overreacted.
I might be guilty of this.
And so the message is, like I said, easier received on both sides if it can be a little bit more diplomatic, a little bit more accountable. And that's where, like I said, that's the one thing, putting politics aside, which I totally agree with. That's the one hope I would hope if there's a new presidency, that the message is more uniting than divisive.
Let's get some things done. This is where we're going. This is how we're getting there.
This is our identity. This is our purpose. And this is what I'm working for.
We're not
and
trying to leave
some of you
anybody
may
out.
not
Let's
like
go.
it, and I'm okay with that. I respect it, and I may run you over. I'm going to do it politely and say, sorry, this is just not, but I don't want to throw dirt in your face and say everything you believe in is retarded.
Well, let's hope Trump watches this. I mean, I think that he's probably going to, who knows what's going to happen.
And I think for moderates, that's important. And that's where sometimes this election may be up in the air, is because that message for moderates, when it's very hateful and sometimes doesn't go over well.
And my thought process is what's a moderate now? Because if we were to rewind just our eras, just not too long ago,
that's a blurrier line.
And you've got Trump,
because we're so far
up. Right.
The pendulum, maybe a moderate's even swinging this part.
Yeah.
It's just we've got these big divides.
So we need to just say, you know what? Let's take the hysterics best we can, and let's breathe deep, and let's love
refocus
America.
on the message.
Yeah,
right? Or refocus on the purpose.
Let's
Sorry.
be good neighbors. Let's be American.
Yeah.
I'm going to tap out on this. It always bothered me, and I don't know why. Viscerally, this bothered me to the core. And I haven't traveled the world as often as you have. You've been to probably more
Kate
places.
and I are headed to Iceland here in a month.
That sounds like a cool place to go.
In Normandy, doing some World War II stuff.
Yeah, that'll be cool. That'd be really cool. Yeah. So I haven't done much of that, but I've heard that people don't like Americans in a lot of places. And they have a bad view of Americans.
It's funny, not my experience.
And that was my thought process, is that probably can't be true, because we both lived in different countries, and that was certainly not true. All we got was curiosity about how is it in America? What's it like? You probably had some of the same experiences there, or at least you get that where you're traveling to. Oh yeah, yeah, Caden.
Like, I've met a bunch of people from all over the world and stuff like that, and usually it's like no one's meeting them with like, oh, you're from this country, I have this stereotype about you or whatever. No, it's like it's just intrigue and just like talking to them about everyday life and seeing how our cultures differ and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you do this, oh, that's cool.
So Caden's saying that there's an interest level amongst people of different cultures as you meet them. That's cool. I always kind of felt like that had to be the case, and then it had to have been a headline that they think we're this way, they think we're that way. It's got to be a headline.
And it's funny because on the Trump topic, as I traveled during that presidency, I did get more comments internationally about, oh, your president said this or did this. So there was a lot more out there talking about it, but it was never like, now I believe that you as Americans have taken on this personality. I never got that.
Yeah. I wonder this, though. When have you ever traveled and heard what any of our other presidents
No, and that's what I
said?
said. It was just that time period where...
It's so interesting to me because he's kind of a rock star going into
he makes headlines, absolutely.
Right. And so with the good comes the bad.
Both.
So it's like interesting because who else gets NATO to pay attention?
Sure.
Guys, last time I checked, we're covering almost the entire bill here, and we don't even live here. You know what I mean? Like, that bothered him. And it got me thinking, why are we footing most of that? That should bother me too. Now, whoa, what else am I paying for? What else are you paying for? What else are we paying for as Americans that we shouldn't be or we would question? I want to know more of these things. Okay, and so that was the beauty of the Trump. Now, he may have called Rosie O'Donnell a name, probably one in which was kinder than other names she's been called historically. I liked her in League of Their Own. I thought she was fantastic. But beyond that, I got no real Rosie O'Donnell one way or the other.
Yeah.
I would like some decorum. I would like us to be less hysterical. I would like us to be more mature in our relationships. You know, like you brought that up with between husband and wife or relationship there. That was really solid because that's where we have a tendency to become hysterical. And because our pride and our egos and our hurt and our, fear maybe or whatever the case might be, or we're taking something for granted that we shouldn't be taking for granted. And, that's why very solid, long-lasting relationships are sweet to look at.
Yeah.
Because they've weathered all of that and they've figured ways to temper
Pride.
The pride, right?
Yeah.
To temper it. And I'd like to see Americans being Americans and being on the march and having purpose regardless of who's sitting
And
in
having
our
the
seat.
right pride, right? I love that word because it has two different meanings, right? Having
Yeah.
the right pride,
Right.
having American pride, but not,
Yeah.
the self-pride and the,
Right.
So it's hard to even know the message because he's
Right.
and that's like I said.
I would like to see a proud nation of who we are moving forward, to look at our kids and try to do things that provide them the same opportunities we had, and to be more engaged and to kind of look through the fog of too many headlines, too much BS, too much this, too much that. I really liked the husband-wife thing. I thought that was really well done. And so it's just like, let's slow it down just a little bit. The president is important, and it does matter, but they're wielding far too much power from that seat today than ever before in the history of our nation. So let's be weary of that amount of power there, and let's start taking more interest in what's happening on the local level, on the state level, where we live, where our neighborhoods are, our families, our kids. Like I said, I'm going to buy my kids some luggage, not as a get out the house. It's a be ready. Be ready to go work on an oil tanker in North Dakota. Be ready to go, start collecting opportunities. And, okay, Reed, you want to go to whatever school? All right. I mean, he may elect that, and Jesse may as well. But who knows what they're going to do? Because right now, if you're willing to work, the world is your oyster. So, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of go back over that. I just found it interesting to think of Trump in a less social media, less microphoned era.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Just to sum it up, I think it would have been different. Personalities don't change, so there would have been some similarities,
Yep.
but it wouldn't have been as hyper-analyzed. And if it's not as hyper-analyzed and not as much and is not as publicized, because maybe other presidents also not caught on mic were calling people names all the time. I'm guessing it happened.
Oh, Bush did.
Yeah,
was my favorite
and so
one.
you're absolutely right that unfortunately you have to lead in the time period you are, and you have to adapt to that time period, and so there's
Yeah. All right. So we'll send Trump out some how to adapt brochures.
Because Lincoln,
Hayden's going to get on
Lincoln
that.
in today's world, right? He would be revered like no other, but not. Yeah. So time period does
Right.
matter, and
Right.
sometimes, that's
Right. There you go.